Welcome back, Beans Army, to another segment off the Less is More Sports podcast. Today, I'm going to talk all about the Champions Classic, the annual event hosting a rotating doubleheader of four Blue Bloods: Kentucky, Duke, Kansas, and Michigan State. And I want to first off get this off my chest right now. I love that they started the game earlier this year. In the past, the first game would start at 7, and it could lead to a second game not starting until close to 10. But this year, the first game started at 6:30, which means the second game tipped off around 9:10. Listen, I'm old. Every hour counts. And I got to be up early for work, which reminds me, definitely don't forget to like and subscribe if you like this video. And if you're listening on the Spotify channel, if you are liking this sound bit, definitely do not forget to like and subscribe. Let's make this us big enough so that I can do this full time and keep giving you all content that you all love. But anyways, I'm going to get into the games and talk about my reactions, what I thought of all four teams, and I want you all to let me know in the comments what you think after this video and this soundbite if you're listening on the Spotify channel. So without further ado, let's get into the first game, which was Kentucky versus Michigan State. Michigan State would win 83 to 66, and I'm going to talk about Big Blue Nation first because let's be honest. I think an old friend of mine says it better than anybody. Kentucky fans, let's be real. Y'all think you all are the bride at every wedding and the corpse at every funeral. I think that's very perfectly said, but you know what? Maybe you all have deserved it over the years because of your all's reputation and resume. I don't know. But basically, as for this game itself, you cannot convince me that this was basically not the Kentucky Louisville game in disguise. Of course, without the fight back of a rivalry game. You know, Tom Izzo, before the game, he emphasized that he'd like to see Michigan State start hitting shots. And they did. Michigan State was shooting 21.7% from three coming into the game. Of course, they shot 54% from three in the first half, 50% for the game. And, you know, like the Louisville game, Michigan State would get hot and Kentucky would try to match them. And it didn't work out for them. The Spartans went on an 18-2 run from around the 10-minute mark to the 6-minute mark, and that opened the floodgates for the Spartan offense. And I got to ask, Matt has said this many times on the podcast. I've said it a time or two, not as many as Matt, but do you all know or remember what the definition of insanity is? Doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And Kentucky made the same mistake that they made against Louisville and tried to match the Spartans shooting. And of course, at first, it started out looking like it might be successful. They started 3 of 5 from 3, but then they went 1 of 10 to finish the first half. They are not comfortable playing in a 3-point shootout. And instead of slowing down, working their offense and all the pick and rolls, backdoor cuts to the basket, they run down to start jacking up threes. It's not working. And then, of course, defensively, of course, like I talked about in the previous segment, the area that all those offseason moves were supposed to fix, supposedly, again, like the Louisville game. Like I said, they are built right now to force turnovers. They play very aggressive. But when they aren't forcing turnovers, like against Louisville, Michigan State is able to take advantage of overcompensations and get open shots. The first half really decided this game. Also, this brings me to another point. As Kentucky looked all out of sorts this entire game, first half was just basically the foreshadowing of what was going to happen for the rest of the game. I remember specifically saying back in the summer, that there's going to be another thing that's going to play a factor with this Kentucky team. And do you all remember when Mark Pope and company was adding all of these portal additions, you know, the ones that brought the team budget to over $22 million? I got on this podcast and I asked the question, did Kentucky overdo it in the portal? Of course, A lot of Kentucky fans hit the comment section joking, "Oh, you mean Kentucky is Kentucky too good? Ha ha ha," or blah 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 whatever. But in reality, it's looking like what I initially said is coming into fruition because that's a lot of mouths to feed. That's a lot of guys getting paid a lot of money, probably thinking that they're the man in the process, and now there's chemistry issues. Like I said was going to happen. And I know before you all hit the comment section again, I know what Mark Pope said in the post-game interview. And honestly, I believe him. He's going to try and fix this as best he can. It just means more to him being an alumni. But if we're being honest, based on what we've seen so far in Kentucky's two biggest games of the year, he has his work cut out for him. So I think I've harped enough about Kentucky for the time being. Let's get to the team that actually won this game, Michigan State. And I'm going to be completely honest. Watching them, they remind me of a 2010s team, right before the small ball era took off. They have a true point guard, three athletes, and a stretch big. They can play fast and discipline. But the number one thing that I worry about is when they play teams that can take it inside on them, I wonder how they're going to be able to handle that because I don't see a true rim protector on that roster. So that's the number one area of weakness that if I'm a Michigan State fan, I'm worrying about. Or more importantly, if I'm Tom Izzo, what I'm worried about. But the number two thing, and this all goes back to what I talked about how Tom Izzo wanted to see the team come out and start hitting shots early, and they did. I'm wondering, is this a one game showing for their perimeter shooting? Because coming into the game, they were 362nd in college basketball. I'm not good at math, but that's not good. So I'm wondering if this game was going to build momentum for their perimeter shooting, or if this is just one of those examples where they were just hot and they fed off that for this game. I guess only time will tell. But moving on to the game that you all know I was tapped into a lot more seriously, the Duke Kansas game. And of course, my Blue Devils would win 78 to 66, but I'm going to be completely honest here. It really doesn't even feel right beating Kansas without Darren Peterson. I mean, I'm sure John Shire is happy with his first win against Bill Self in Kansas, and it was close until the closing minutes. But if I'm going to be completely honest, it doesn't feel right. I'm the type of person who I want to beat you at your best. I don't want there to be any excuses in the background. And if I'm being honest, that's a pretty big excuse. Darren Peterson's a generational player. Actually, I'm gonna stop that right there. I don't like how that's thrown out. Darren Peterson is a great player. He is an elite prospect. Let's go that route. And I'm gonna be completely honest with how this game went. I think if Kansas had Darren Peterson, they do win this game. I mean, there's no way around it. They won by 12. You want to do the math on it? They're missing about 22 points a game. I mean, if you want to judge it like that, then they win by 10. But although Kansas was missing a big part of their offense, I got to say I was impressed with how they played. They actually jumped out to an early lead, forcing turnovers and getting out in transition. But luckily for the Blue Devils, the momentum shift when Flory Badunga picked up his second foul. Then that's when Duke went on a 17 to 5 run to take a 41 to 33 lead heading into halftime. And, they were able to get an aggressive Kansas team in foul trouble and get to the free throw line. It was a slow half for Cam Boozer, but what I really think he did well was passing out of the double team. I thought that's when Duke's offense looked the most efficient. When Kansas was in the double, you know, Cam took no time at all, just finding the open guy and just getting it to him for an open look. And of course, that outlet pass that he hit Isaiah Evans in transition was just absolutely a thing of beauty. Beautiful play, best play of the game in my opinion. But what is crazy watching this game, and I'm talking about Cam Boozer here, is I think I'm saying it, I'm hearing a lot of other people saying it, is that we actually are saying post game that this dude played bad and he still finished with 18 points, 10 rebounds, and 5 assists. Like that's a career day for most players in college basketball, but Cam Boozer, we're talking about him playing bad. So I think that's impressive in its own right. But of course, as we go on to talk about like the recap of the second half, I mean, Kansas continued to battle in the second half, but Duke was able to pull away when foul trouble again struck and Bryson Tiller, not the singer, the hooper. As a Louisville native, I got to shout out Bryson Tiller, the singer. He's Louisville native. When he fouled out, and again, Duke was able to attack the paint, get to the line, and basically close out the game. But it wasn't for a lack of effort from the Kansas Jayhawks. I credit them. They continue to fight throughout. And I think this is going to only benefit Kansas until Darren Peterson comes back. If they can learn, to find other options to add to that resume when he comes back, they're going to be much better for that. But overall, this is Duke's ninth win in the Champions Classic, tying them for Kansas for the most in the event history. But despite the win, one thing that really concerned me about how the Blue Devils played, and I think it's a pretty big concern, I think it needs to be addressed. Their guards have to be able to cut off opposition's driving lanes. White and Council were able to drive wherever they wanted, and it kind of opened up an a visible issue of that Duke's going to struggle against quicker guards. I know late in the game they went to a 2-3 zone and it had some success, but they need to learn how to, cut the drivers off because what they don't have this year that they maybe have had in past John Shire teams is they don't have a rim protector like a Derek Lively or a Kaman Malawach that's able to be an eraser or be that last line of security if the guards get beat on the perimeter. So they are going to have to do a better job of cutting the drivers off, or at least playing that pressure defense, being able to maybe trap them in the corners. Do what you got to do. Listen, of course, this is a John Shire coach team, and from what we've seen through the previous seasons, his teams do get better as the season goes on. So I'm interested to see how they adjust that. But on the flip side, mark my words, this game foreshadowed Caden Boozer evolving into the unsung clutch hero for Duke basketball. Against Kansas, he scored two crucial buckets, creating on his own and getting to the rim. Even later in the game, when Kansas went to a press to close the game out, Shire trusted the freshman in a 2 point guard lineup with Caden and fellow point guard Caleb Foster. That's a big ask for a freshman, especially when you look back at how last season's season ended. But if you've watched him through the high school circuits, this isn't surprising. Go back and watch the tape from the Peach Jams and the Chipotle Nationals tournaments through the years. Caden, although is often overshadowed by his twin brother, has a clutch gene that shouldn't be ignored. The bigger the moment, the better he plays. That played the largest role when I compared on this podcast the Boozer twins' commitment to Tyus Jones and Jahlil Okafor's. As the season goes on and he becomes more comfortable in the college hoop setting, Duke is going to greatly benefit from that. That wraps up my main takeaways from the Champions Classic. As always, like and subscribe to the Less is More Sports YouTube and Spotify channel to get the latest updates we have on content coming out. Be sure to follow the social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Threads. That's at Less is More Sports. Be sure to follow the side quest on TikTok. That's at Beanstat018. And let me know what you think in the comments. What were your takeaways from the Champions Classic? But that's officially all the time I have for today. So as always, have a good one and enjoy.